Are you working backwards from a dream, from a call where you're saying, I know what I want, and that's the end in mind? Think about it. So basically, what you're saying is that, you know what, January? This is how I would love to see my lifetime. January, this is how I believe this is how I would love to see 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And is it possible for us to work backwards from that dream? Because most of us operate by default, not really by design. Think about it. It's not as though I was never taught to say, January, let's design the life that you want, right? Let's just kind of figure out and really pay attention to every part of who you are. And let's design what would that be possible? What would your relationship look like? What would your marriage look like? What would your family life look like? What would your home look like? And so what happens is that we just kind of get what we just kind of we're just settle for what we get. And I see this all the time. It's like, well, this is kind of what the cards were giving me, and this is what I was told I could do, and this is the cards I was dealt. Well, is it possible for us to reconsider that belief system that this is the card I was dealt? Is it possible that somewhere that narrative has actually been destructive to us creating a life of legacy? Because what I want for women is to be able to what I want for women is really to be able to say, okay, I see myself creating a legacy of maybe my home. What is that legacy that you are working towards? Which means that you weren't born here just to, you know, be in a family, find a job, get married, and then retire, and then work towards retirement. You were born here with a very specific divine mission that's unique to you, something that I cannot fulfill and nobody else can if you don't fulfill it, which means that we spend our lifetime trying to discover our God-given mission. And so if we don't actually work towards discovering that mission, what happens is that there is a hole in the tapestry of life. So my question to you is, are you actually working backwards from that dream, from that design? Well, the problem that I see is that nobody's actually teaching us to work backwards from the design. It's not like we go to school and say, okay, children, this is how we discover our divine purpose. This is how you learn how to make a decision, learn how to create a plan, learn how to say no so that you can actually say yes to great things. This is how you discover the type of friendship that's going to help support your God-given call. This is how you work towards your contribution. This is how you find a partner, a relationship that's going to support your divine mission. No, there isn't a place where we learn to be that kind of woman. And so by default, we just accept the cards, the cards that we've been dealt with. Well, I am here to invite you to reconsider that thought pattern. Okay. Maybe we were here with a mission, and our duty is to develop who we need to become in order for us to be prepared to receive that God-given mission. And not only is it a duty, it is also our source of fulfillment and happiness, because you are not going to be happy unless you're doing what you were born to do. And it's not just doing, it's actually becoming who you were called to be. Okay, because what we do is just a byproduct of who we are. And there's all these I think false conversation about this is what I'm going to do, and this is what's going to, I'm going to create this school, and I'm going to create this entrepreneurship, I'm going to create this home. Well, I will tell you, ladies, you can create and achieve all these different things, but if you are not fulfilled because you're not intentionally contributing to the lives around you, you will not be fulfilled. What does that look like? It means that you could become the president of the United States or become the CEO of X, Y, and Z, and training hundreds of thousands of people. But if you don't know actually how to be generous throughout your moments, what I mean is that you walk in the office and you're actually trying to contribute to your coworker, or you're intentionally trying to make sure that you're contributing to your child, your relationship, your friendship, you're not going to be fulfilled no matter how high your achievements are. Achievements are there. We strive for these things that we want and achieve for one purpose. It actually helps to become the one we're called to be, right? It helps us to develop ourselves. But if we're not doing that, then we're not really fulfilled. It doesn't matter. Now, the same thing would be true for being a mom, right? Because when we think of success, we have this one-dimensional idea of success as fame, fortune, whatever that is in the external, kind of our cultural's design of success. I refuse to conform to a design. I believe I'm a successful woman because I have children that I'm trying to raise intentionally. Success should never be defined by achievement, rather by our contribution in our daily moments. That's what success is. Here's a definition of success that I want you to reconsider. It's our ability to impact human behavior to its highest good. Now, when we measure, the metric of success now becomes a metric of our ability to contribute to the lives around us. Every woman is privileged to success. And you could be the president of the United States and be the crankiest, unkind woman and never feel as though you're contributing to humanity. So we need to redefine success in women, okay? That success is our ability to impact human behavior to its highest good. Therefore, mothers can be successful, and so can the president of the United States if you're the woman. It is not defined by fame, fortune, or whatever it is the external is. So when women ask me, January, is it bad to be successful? Or, why is it that where should we be going for success? I said, you need to first define what success means for yourself. Because if the definition of success that you've been trained to see is that success looks a certain way, it means nice cars, it means X, Y, and Z, then you're going to perpetually feel as though you're not successful. But if your definition is success is contribution, then it doesn't matter what you are, what your achievement is. It matters how you show up at every God-given moment. And that should be our definition of success. So in the women's school, I tell our students, we say, listen, when somebody asks you or talks about success, go look them in the eye and say, define success for me. Because we need to be redefining success specifically for women. There's never been a better time to be a woman. And we need to be fierce in our ability to have a script that's going to redefine how women show up for the world. And the only way we're going to do this if we train, if we understand who we are in greater length, okay? Success has to be redefined. I refuse to conform to the definition of success. It has to be X, Y, and Z, okay? And it is also, right, defined by men. Therefore, women and mothers did not seem or felt successful. Well, it needs to change. First, the world has changed, okay? And that we need to define success. I believe I'm successful because I have 7 children and I'm able to do the dance. And yes, I'm running 2 companies. And yes, I am, I have employees that are working for me. But my definition of success is not the accomplishment, but rather how I treat every person that work for us. That's my metric of success. And here's the thing, ladies, if you understand who you are as a woman and your call, you can be so intentional that every conversation is an opportunity for contribution. That, ladies, will be such a defining moment when you understand and you can clearly see that that is our God-given mission, that every moment cannot be wasted anymore, that there is a mission at every second. And if we can, because we know how to contribute, at every God-given moment, we're going to lay in bed knowing we are fulfilled. And it's an important skill set. It's not one skill. It's a compounding skill set, right? Learning to ask questions is a skill set. Learning how to listen effectively is a skill set. Boundaries is only half the skill. Communicating your boundaries is the other half. So many women I've trained throughout the years, thousands of women are like, oh, Junior, I've read all these boundary books, but nothing's changed. They've read 500 boundary books. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but they still don't know how to actually communicate boundaries because it's not information that changes us, ladies. It's formation. We design the woman and then we learn the discipline that actually can conform to the design. So if you want to be a woman who is firm with her boundaries, you want to learn the skill that does it. It doesn't matter if you're at 500 boundary books. I always tell women the fruits will tell itself. Okay, our fruits means our families, our mission, our work, our marriage, our friendship. The fruit should actually in itself be the invitation, right? And if you're truly living a life of truth, beauty, and goodness, the fruits will tell its story. And if you're not, it just means that we need to work on some parts of the arena. If you take our quiz in the women's school, you're going to see which arena is empty. right? This is why we need to have a metric towards what's empty in our life, right? Is it the marriage? Well, it's funny when when I do this training with women and I actually get them to take the quiz and they realize, oh, January, I never realized I was actually scoring, really low in my intimate life, because we asked a very specific question. And some women think that they have a great marriage when actually they don't, because their measure of a great marriage was never actually even clarified. I used to I was just training this one woman who used to tell me, January is really a great guy. I can see him is really changing. They had 3 children. Now he really takes the trash, and that's awesome. That was her measure of a great marriage, that he actually took the trash out and helped out once a week. And so I told her, I said, can I invite you to look at other relationships out there? Right. And so my invitation to you ladies is that I want you to reconsider, what design do you really want to create in your life? What's the design of the woman who you want to be? I tell women all the time, say, first, you need to design your life. Okay. And secondly, you need to design the woman that's going to live that life. And the resistance, I normally go, well, we can't, we have to do God's will and we have to do what it is that God is asking of. I said, well, you can't do God's will unless your will is formed. Okay. And which means that we need to design our lives very intentionally, because to live by default is to conform to how everyone else thinks we should live. And that's a tragedy. I love this new quote from Rolla May that I just was, doing a training on it. Oh, I'm seeing someone. I'm doing a live and a podcast training, that the opposite of cowardice is not, I'm sorry, the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. So I'm going to ask you, are you conforming to your own norm? Right? We have expectations that we have built for ourselves. This is what motherhood should look like. This is what our home should look like. This is what X, Y, and Z should look like. Conformity hurts us. You know why conformity hurts? Because we cannot actually go for our God-given call if we are conforming to the norm. And that norm doesn't even have to be the norm of what the world thinks. It's our own norm, our own belief system, right? The conformity that says, you know what, you really can't be both a mom and maybe create a contribution to humanity. I refuse, right? We can be very intentionally specific. We are all called to different things. Or, you know what, January, you can't. I remember I was doing a live webinar and I just had a baby maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago. This was like baby number 5, number 6. And somebody emailed me and said, January, you can't actually do a webinar because you just had a baby and that's just not right. I was like, I do a webinar and it's 2 hours and it actually gives me life. Giving women, I love what I do. Right? Everybody has sort of set expectations of how things need to be. So we need to reflect on ourselves and say, what are the false expectations I have given on myself? And what do I need to do to refuse to conform to my own norm and kick that needle a little further and develop myself? Right? And what's the purpose of developing ourselves? This is why personal development world gets such a bad reputation. We are not an end in itself. We don't develop ourselves for our sake. We develop ourselves so we can give more of ourselves to the people around us. The purpose of our life is about contribution. It's about generosity. It is about becoming a gift to our, to our significant someone, to our families, to our friendships, so that by instant interaction with you, their lives should be changed and transformed. Isn't that amazing? Do we have the capacity to do that? And I will say yes, because if we have the right skills and if we understood that we are only here for a very limited time, then we won't waste time with small talks. We will learn the skill of going deep. I tell women, January, how do you get to do what you do? And, we just onboarded a coaching program in our training, and now I'm training. I think we had 70 women on board this year. And says, how do you do when you're doing? You're training all these women. I said, I do very little. I do only what I know I'm great at, which is, creating the trainings. And I'm very disciplined with my time. I have to be. I should say that I'm not always disciplined with my time, but really I aspire and I challenge myself to be disciplined, which means I say no 85% of the time. Why? Because I'm protecting my space as a mom, which means my kids are home, I'm home with them, right? And so I have to be able to do a lot with my 3 hours in the morning and my 2 hours right now as having a newborn baby and 2 hours in the afternoon while they're napping. My point in saying that is I could give myself and tell myself all these different stories, but I don't want to conform to our norms. So my point is that we can absolutely follow what that is to create a life of greatness, where we create a life of contribution. But we have to do things differently. We cannot be the same woman and expect a different life. Now, in my last podcast, I was talking about, are we entitled to a beautiful life? And it's important for us to really use that word beautiful, because beautiful in the word itself actually bypasses logic. If you look at a sunset, if you look at a sunrise, it is beautiful. Why? Because it actually bypasses logic and it helps us to just be in awe. What does awe mean? It inspires us and it draws out. And so here's a great thing for us to ponder. How are we living lives of awe? Right? That we become an arrow towards the divine, not an end in itself, because our life of a hot mess could be the very reason people don't believe in God, right? Or our lives could be a walking invitation towards truth, beauty, and goodness, and it makes people think deeper about their life. And so in the women's school, we talk about depth. None of this like small stuff. We could die tomorrow and waste our time and talent, right? Instead of Netflix, instead of whatever it is, social media, we're studying. I tell women all the time, if you're not studying, that means that you're not growing. If you're not growing, we're going to start to stink. And if we're going to start to stink, our children are actually going to start to smell us stink. That's obviously metaphorically, but every woman should be studying. What are we studying, January? We study ourselves. We study expansion. How do we expand our mind? We study our skill set. We study the people around us. And how do you study the people? You create a really good rhythm and routine, right? And so it's important for us to create the necessary disciplines in order for us to create a beautiful life. Everybody wants a beautiful life. I can go up to every woman and say, would you want a beautiful life? No, Jerry, no, thanks. I don't want it. No, of course not. The only reason why we say we don't want it is because we don't think we deserve it or can't have it. The reality is that it's not like you go to school to create a beautiful life of contribution, right? We learn a lot of algebra stuff. We learn a lot of, scientific stuff, but then we don't learn decision-making skills. We don't learn how to say no effectively. Well, there isn't a school for it. That's the goal in the women's school, is that we create an international school. And, now we have a school, for women, but the goal is that we're going to train 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 12-year-olds and, really create a hub of being able to learn how to be a woman and how to be human effectively, that we live a life of contribution every second that we can. And the only way to do that is that if we study, train, and actually lead ourselves first. We cannot lead everyone else if we're not leading ourselves. We should be, at every God-given moment, be able to say, today I am working towards an invitation, a life of invitation, that moment I walk out the door in the morning, I create an invitation for my children. That's not easy, ladies. There is a lot of suffering that comes with an intentional life of discipline. Okay. To be able to say no to just sitting in the couch at night, to be able to really manage our day, to really manage our time, that's a lot of human discipline. But the contrary would be to life of just waste, no intentionality behind it. Right. And this is where the lack of fulfillment comes in. And a lot of times, being around so many women, because we feel like nobody ever taught us to live by design, because nobody, taught us to actually work backwards from that dream and designing our life, designing our marriage, designing our home, designing a beautiful space. And we wake up and we realize, I don't like my life. Well, I tell women, I said, listen, you have to give yourself permission to know that this is not things where we're actually given, right? That nobody's forming and training our minds, our skill set to create the beautiful life. So permission to feel as though, wait a minute, I feel like, and I tell myself this, I feel like, so late have I learned this. Kind of like that song, so late have I learned to love you, Lord. But so late have I learned this. And I say that all the time. So I tell my children, I'm teaching you skills. I wish somebody would have taught me, 15, 20 years ago, but I cannot give up. That I must at every moment being able to say, well, I start again today. It takes a lot of humility to feel like, oh, you're not exactly where you want to be, and that you have to begin again every morning. But you know what? What a better way to live, right? Humility is not shrinking and making yourself small. Humility is about taking responsibility to make your life a contribution. And that is fulfilling. And so that's my invitation for you, ladies, is that you're here on a divine mission. And this mission that you're here is not just for you, it's for the people around you. So this mission for you to actually become a woman of discipline, training, and formation, and study and growth is not for your sake alone, right? So if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for the people that are counting on you, such as your children, right? And so we need to raise daughters that know how to design their life effectively. Sorry, that's my dog. We need to design lives that are going to inspire our spouse, right? We can't change them. We can only inspire them. And so that's what I really want, Jimmy. That's what I want to be able to invite you, is to say, you know what? What would it be like to actually design my life? What would it be like to actually feel as though I can create impact at every God-given moment, right? That your fashion actually can create impact, that your tonality, I was doing a training on tonality to the ladies because this is something that we have no training in, and I was doing training in the women's school, and I say, how you say things actually changes the result. I could say things such as, don't do that, that's so silly, or don't do that, that's awful, I'm so bad. Or you can say, please don't do that, that's actually awful and bad. Same exact words, totally different tonality, you're going to get a different response. Tonality is a skill set. I'm going to write a book about it someday. That is not the first book though. But tonality is a skill that changes people's lives. Okay. So as women, our tonality has to be mastered. There has to be an end in mind. You need to know your goal, right? Tonality matters in the boardroom just as it is in the kitchen. And that tonality can change the way you impact people's lives. So my point is that we need to get on board with training ourselves every day. It was funny because I had to give my bio for a speaking I was given. And for some reason, this idea of being a motivational speaker, I'm like, I am not a motivational speaker. I don't, it just doesn't bode well with me. And I was listening to one of my mentors and she said, well, I'm a teacher because I train. And that's what I want us to actually see ourselves as women. I am a teacher, and I want women to consider that they are a teacher and that at every moment they're actually teaching, whether they realize it or not. How you show up at the grocery store, you're teaching. Okay. How you have conversations with your spouse and for your children, you're teaching. You're also teaching people how to treat you, right? And even yesterday, it was funny. I was on a date, Friday nights on a date, and my husband is a real gentleman, and we have an incredible gift of our marriage that we're just such best friends. So we're growing together, we're dreaming together. And so we were eating and we were having dinner. We just went to the local pub. And so typically he always walks behind me, and he always carries my stuff. He is like the ultimate gentleman. He wasn't started out that way. And I remember he used to always walk ahead of me. And I remember when we were first dating, and I would look at him, I said, do you typically walk in front of the woman you're dating? Just not used to it. And it's one of those little things. Little things are important. We talk about this. Details matters. Okay. Details is where we create distinction. So anyways, back to my story. So we're eating dinner. And so he sits down and I sit down, and I was intentionally waiting for him to actually pull my chair because he typically does. And so I sit down and I said, oh, you typically pull my chair. You typically pull my chair, and I'm really grateful for it. And I wasn't saying, you don't pull my chair, or I can't believe you don't pull my chair. I was like, I typically pull my chair, and I'm really just grateful for that. Typically you do that. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I was totally got distracted. The point is, I'm saying this is that we're constantly teaching how people, our spouse, our children treat us. That's a really important skill set that if you don't know, we don't know what we don't know, we could be robbing our children, our spouse, of becoming a greater man or woman, right? And so this is a skill set that if we're not intentional about it, it is a form of robbery, okay? So live by design. Don't conform to your own norm. Find a role model that's living by design and study her. That's what I do. I am a really good student. I study people. And as a matter of fact, my husband, I was studying my one mentor, and I'm literally listening to the same lesson 10 times. The same lesson. A lot of times I give women a lesson. They're like, yeah, I've read that. And I'm like, no. You don't know. You never know it until you are it. I tell women, oh yeah, I've gone through that January. The fruits will tell me if you've gone through it. Reading a book is easy. Mastering the book and becoming that book is the part that requires mastery, right? And so I was literally listening to it 10 times, and it's like a 20-minute clip of this, of learning how to imagine and dream. My point is that we need to become students. And when you live your life where you're constantly expanding and growing, then you actually create a norm for yourself of um, growth. And that then becomes an invitation to the lives around you, because then my children know I'm growing, right? And so I can look them in the eye and say, well, are you growing today, Pia? You know, and then I was doing the affirmation with them in the morning. And literally I'm doing their hair, and I've been doing, I am brave, I'm honest, I'm consistent, I am kind, I am generous, I am beautiful. To be able to look, and that's the hard part for women, to be able to look with your daughter, and your daughter should never doubt the fact that you believe you're beautiful. And if not, then we need to just work on it. It's not you're bad, you're wrong. We've just never worked on it. The definition of beauty in your mind is probably one dimensional, right? You need to find out how you can undo those skill set, which is what we teach. And so I tell women, okay, you need to be able to look at your daughter in the eye and say, no, I believe I'm beautiful, right? But if our definition of beautiful looks a lot like one dimensional, whatever, how many pounds, and you're postpartum, you don't feel beautiful, that's a tragedy. Okay. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is to really ask yourself, is it time for me to grow? And how can I grow to become the woman I really want to be, but I've never been shown how to be? In the women's school, we are going to teach you how to grow. That's what our mission is to elevate being a woman, right? It's a state of being. And so give yourself the tools you need to create and design a beautiful life. And I promise you, you're going to work and live from the legacy backwards. My name is January Donovan from the Woman's School. Remember that you are here with a divine mission, with a call. And your mission is to discover it so that you can become a contribution to humanity. Thank you, ladies, for watching. This is your friend and guide, January Donovan, with the Woman's School. To the next podcast.